Hello folks, it is time for some more hobby nightmares. Hopefully you're all having a wonderful day and everything's going well wherever you are. This will not be a super long one. I have not lost my voice, as you can all tell, which is great. But my energy levels are a bit all over the place. I've received quite a few emails and messages from you, so thank you very, very much for showing an interest in me and what's been going on with me over the last few weeks. I thought it best to talk to you at the start of a Monday hobby nightmare about what's been going on, so people can be pointed in this direction for health stuff. So, on Thursday, I went through a surgery to remove around 60% of my thyroid gland. Those of you who don't know what a thyroid gland is, I think I've mentioned it before, but this is the video where all the information is going to be. It is a butterfly-shaped gland on your neck. Very small, it's not very big. And I got the left wing of that butterfly and the central body taken away. The central body is called the isthmus, which I think is a pretty cool name. That was done because we found two nodules, one lump on the left wing and a nodule on the centre of the thyroid, which my specialist didn't like the look of. She gave it a 30% chance of it being cancerous and said, listen, even if this was a 10% chance, I'd still be wanting to remove it from you just so we can get it out of there, because it might grow into places where it's not meant to be, like your esophagus and things like that. So went through this surgery. Wonderful staff at the hospital that I was at. They were amazing. Doctor, surgeon was an absolute rock star, came in, sorted me right out. And I was out the same day. So I was in very early in the morning, and I will go into it on stream. I think it'll be a funny stream to go into what the actual experience was like. I've had a few days now. I've had the weekend to recover, and I do have a scar on my neck. I'm not going to show you, but there is a plaster there now where everything was. It's very tight. But in terms of pain, the actual site itself isn't very sore at all. It's mostly has been the throat where they put the breathing tubes down and stuff. That was sore. But things are getting better. Generally, my energy levels are not very high. My emotional levels are not very high because of the general anaesthetic. It takes 4 or 5 days for that to wear off and get out your system and go away. And so that's what's been going on. In terms of those lumps and bumps, there's a 30% chance that they're cancerous, as I said before. But also, I was told by my specialist that even if you do get a thyroid cancer, if you've got to select one off the list of cancers to get, this is the one you want, because it doesn't tend to spread around the body, tends to stay where it is, tends to just not bother you too much. But it's best to get it out of there, because at the end of the day, it is cancer. You don't want it in your body, and that's what we're going to do. So I have another scan next month. Not another scan, the results. So they're going to take away what they cut out, basically, and run tests on it. And next month I will have results ready to go on what they cut out. And there are several different possibilities. First one is that they find out that it's cancerous. Okay, cool. But it's one of the most common thyroid cancers that once we cut it out, it's gone. Basically, because this cancer only ever produces these nodules, and that's it. So once we've cut it out, it's gone, and you're fine. The worst case scenario is that they find that it's one of the more aggressive thyroid cancers, and even then, all they will then do is take me in for another surgery pretty soon after that and remove the rest of my thyroid, and then give me irradiated iodine injections into the neck to make sure that anything that might be left over is gone. Right, that's the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, and there's a 70% chance of this, is that they come back and say, yeah, all we know is that what we cut out was not cancerous. It's just a glob. It was 2 globs that were on your thyroid, and most people in life will get thyroid lumps and bumps at one stage or another. Especially men will get thyroid lumps and bumps at one stage or another, usually in the 50s. So that's what's going on. Right now, I'm incredibly grateful to the NHS and for them helping me out, and the the professionalism and just the way they were was fantastic. I couldn't have. Honestly, I was not nervous. I was nervous whilst I was in there, but they set that to right straight away. Like the surgeon was an absolute rock star. He was like, "Yeah, I've done hundreds of these. You'll be fine." You know. Again, I'll get into it on a stream because I want to do Hobby Nightmares. But yeah, I just thought I'd give you an update of what's been going on. This is my first day back at work. I'm supposed to be doing very light duties, so this is going to be a quicker Hobby Nightmare than most as I ease back into it. But right now, really grateful that we get to have a really good Christmas, and we get to operate on the knowledge that, unless we're told otherwise at the results, that everything's fine. You know, everything's been cut out, everything's good, and we're all good to go. So that is where we are at the moment. I've just come off of my codeine, stopped taking that now, simply because it doesn't hurt very much, and it's not worth the after effects of codeine, which is a very strong painkiller when you don't really need it that much, you know what I mean? So, yeah, that is my news. Most of you will know I've been very, very, very nervous about it for a while, for like the last few weeks, last 6-7 weeks. So to get to this point feels really good. Feels awesome to get to this point and be generally okay. Very, very grateful right now. So let's jump into your Hobby Nightmares before I lose my voice. And let's go to Isaac. How's it going, dude? And he says, "Hello North, Isaac here. It's been some time since I last sent in a nightmare, but I have got another one for you that is a bit of a doozy. I've been an avid listener to your YouTube channel for about 2 years now, and it is one of my favourites to listen to while I'm painting my miniatures." Okay, cool. Before I go on, Isaac, I know I've got this platform. If you, how do I put this? If you find anything on your body that is not meant to be there, go see a doctor. Alright? Go see a doctor. Be brave, because it is worth catching it now. Most of these things, you know, it's not a death sentence, dude. Most of these things, when caught, even if they're caught relatively late on, are curable, get riddable, treatable, right? Get out there and make sure that you do your bit. Go to your doctor, make sure that they can give you a once-over. Do not do what I did and go to a nurse and then rely on that as like, oh, that's probably what it is then, because I love nurses, love you all, but they're not doctors and they're not specialists, and they don't, and generally when they're feeling around, they shouldn't be giving you prognosis and things like that. They shouldn't be doing that. They should just be going, okay, I'm going to send you to this person who knows more than me, and that's what we're going to do. All right, so go to your doctor, go to a specialist, get it sorted out. All right, just wanted to say that. I forgot to say that before we moved on. But yeah, I won't be speaking about it again. So that's I will do on stream. We'll have a little get together, like a debrief, a surgery debrief, which would be really funny, because there were some funny things that happened when I was in there, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. So back to Isaac. One of your videos stood out to me as you used a term for certain people that I've been struggling to define for quite some time. Time vampires. Someone who will come into the store, normally a Games Workshop store, that I own, and talk for literal hours without wanting to actually buy anything. I've had a few customers like this, but I guess if they don't buy anything, they aren't really a customer. One in particular was quite the nightmare. Now, it is not uncommon for people to come in and talk to me about a lot of different things, especially if they are hobby related, and it is something that I've gotten used to. Apparently, being a game store owner is like being a bartender for nerds. It's not a bad analogy. I use the term affectionately, as I'm definitely one myself due to my love of little plastic figures. People just seem to open up when they feel comfortable, and though I can say some of the things shared may be a bit strange, I am proud of the fact that so many people feel so comfortable in my store that they can be open and honest with me. However, certain things I am just completely lost on how to respond to. Enter our nightmare. I will call him Dave, as that is a common term for nightmare people on your channel, as I know. Yes. So a time vampire, for those of you who don't know, that is a Games Workshop term. Generally describes, again, somebody who comes into your Games Workshop store and will want to twist your ear, talk to you about everything, life, the universe, and everything, but they never seem to get the wallet out to pay for any actual models. Um, these are the kinds of people who Games Workshop will tell you will ruin your store if you have gaming in your store.
Mm.
I don't agree. I think I'm in the John Stallard, as we figured a few weeks ago, or last week. I'm in the John Stallard school of games in stores. I think you can run games in stores and still make a lot of money by using those games to promote your business and promote your games and your models. I don't think you have to have one or the other, is what I'm saying. I think you can have a happy medium of both. But time vampires are indeed attracted by games in stores, or being able to sit off in a store and just chill out, that kind of a thing. The more regimented your store is in terms of how it uses its time and its play space, the less time vampires you will generally have in your store, because they operate in these social liminal spaces, right? These spaces where they can just fade in and just sort of be there. There are some time vampires though that I actually like being around, and I always talk about one. He told me I had no interest in watching Lucifer, the TV show, but I did watch it because this guy sat down and he told me what happened in every single season of Lucifer, right? It was a very quiet Tuesday. I had nothing else to do. I'm sitting there painting the Age of Sigmar starter box set for the front cabinet, and literally, that's what he did. He just sat down and told me about all the things that had been going on in Lucifer. So, you know, it can save you from boredom sometimes. Now, Dave had been in the store a few times before this, and though I never really took the time to get to know him, he didn't seem like a bad guy at all. Remember, I've only met Dave twice at this point, and our entire relationship consisted of me trying to sell him on different hobbies. I don't even know Dave's middle or last name, nor did he know mine. We were quite literally as close to strangers as you could get without actually being strangers. Now, Dave had come in to look at our die-cast car selection. We have a few varying scales, but Dave is big into Hot Wheels. I have quite a few peg hooks on the wall, but a lot more in storage in the back. As he is looking at the ones on the wall, I'm working on the computer trying to get orders of various products in. I can see the whole store from my desk, so everybody can see me as well. Dave starts the conversation with some small talk. How are you? You know, how about this weather, eh? The drive here is nice, that sort of thing. Dave then asks about prices of cars. They are all clearly marked, and about more in the back. I bring the rest out for him. As he looks through them, he starts asking more questions. Okay, this is the worst kind of time vampire. I didn't mind a time vampire who would come in and just talk to me if it was quiet. That's fine. You know, and most time vampires are not socially inept to the point that if you're in a busy store, they won't try and take up all your time then, you know, because they know you're busy, right? This is one of the worst kinds. This is the time vampire who will come into your store and will make you do work with no intention of rewarding that work. Don't get me wrong. Just because I go and get a model out for you from the back, it doesn't mean you're entitled to pay for it. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you make me go and get that model out from the back and you've got no intention of ever paying for it ever, because you're just looking to kill some time, that's a dick thing to do. That's a time vampire thing to do. And this is one of the worst kind of time vampires. They will come into your store, they will ask to see all of your stock. It's the equivalent of you trying to sell your car, somebody coming round to your house, kicking its tyres for 3 hours and then not buying it because they just were bored and wanted to see a car. Right? Yeah. Some are a bit personal. Sorry, he starts asking me more questions. Some are a bit personal, but still normal to ask if you're trying to pass the time. Are you married? How long? I'm giving him one-word answers, as I've already wasted entire days on Dave trying to get him to buy more than $6 worth of things, and I have no intention of doing it again. I've got actual work to do, so I do the retail. Yeah. Uh-huh. Of course. That's crazy. that I'm sure you're familiar with your retail experience, yes. He asks me about my wife, and I tell him we've been together for 4 years, and that is when he decides to completely open up to me like I'm his therapist. If you don't want to read what he says, you can skip ahead because it's extremely personal and traumatic, but it's something I think you should read as it makes the ending make more sense. Alright? Okay? He says that he wishes he still had his wife, Vanessa, name changed, as she had died. Oh, that's a shame. That's a shame. Did you feel bad when he said that? Like maybe he's a time vampire? Because some time vampires are time vampires because they're lonely. I knew at least one guy who you could describe as a time vampire who had just been through some shit. Do you know what I mean? Like he's from the army, he'd lost his missus, you know, and he didn't really know how to communicate outside of the hobby. So he would just come in and talk shit about the hobby all the time. You know what I'm saying? Anyway. While I'm a bit taken aback at the sudden sharing of information, I can relate. It would be very traumatic if I had lost my own darling wife. Dave then goes on to tell me, unprompted, that she was hit by a tractor. What? That she was hit by a tractor semi-truck at a red light, that he had watched the whole thing. What, dude? What? She had been hit by a tractor trailer semi-truck at a red light, and that he had watched the whole thing because she was just leaving the house at the time. I'm basically silent at this point as I have no idea how to respond to that. That sounds like Final Destination, dude. Jesus. He then goes on to say that she was 6 months pregnant with their child and that he had held her in his arms as she died. I'm completely stunned. Oh my god. I barely know Dave. That's information that I have no clue how to react to. What am I supposed to do? Show sympathy? Yeah. Yeah. That's what you do, Isaac, yeah. You generally show sympathy. Like, what am I supposed to do with that information? What do you want, a party? You want a medal? Buy some models. I mean, I'm extremely sympathetic, but what am I supposed to say? I'm not a therapist and I don't know Dave. From Adam. After about 45 minutes of him talking and going through the cars, each time he says something he looks up at me as if to gauge my reaction. Now Dave had shown no emotion the entire time he was talking to me. I thought that was strange, but being around people who have suffered traumatic experiences whilst I was in the military, I can say that people deal with it in different ways. But then Dave does something very weird. He says that he really misses his wife Valerie. The name's changed, hang on. He says her name. But wait, I think to myself, he said his wife's name was Vanessa, didn't he? Then it dawns on me. David's just making all this up. That's why he keeps pausing to see how I'm reacting. That's why his story seems to keep getting worse and worse as he tells it. Oh my god. I started asking Dave more questions about this event, and a lot more of his answers changed from his first story. It went from a semi-truck to a bus that hit her. Then she went from 6 months pregnant to 7 months. I don't know if he realised that his story stopped making sense or not, but he just kept going. It kept getting more and more traumatic. Then, after the funeral on the drive home, asking Dave more questions about this event, and a lot more of his answers changed from his story. Okay, so I'm getting mixed up here because my screen's so big that here's why I say please split up your hobby nightmare, because if it's very long horizontally, I do this. Read. Change line. Read. You know what I mean? Because my screen is very wide. Subtle flex there, but there you go. Then, after the funeral on the drive home, a drunk driver hit his car and he lost his mum. It just keeps going like this. After about 2 hours of this, he finally decides on a single car, buys it and leaves. At least he got a sale. I'm completely confused as to what his end goal actually was. Why would he tell this horrible story to a complete stranger? On top of that, seemed to be making it up as he went along. Did Dave want sympathy? For me to feel sorry for him? Haven't seen Dave since that day. Sometimes I wonder if he was just trying to get a rise out of me. I wonder what you think of the whole situation and how you dealt with time vampires in your time in retail. Anyways, thanks for being an awesome channel, North, and I'll keep listening while painting and maybe send in some more nightmares for you to read. Isaac, cheers, man. Well, I never dealt with one like that. I will say, never ever dealt with one like that. That was kind of crazy. That was kind of crazy. I don't know what that guy's deal was. This is the first time in a long time I've had a hobby nightmare where I'm just like, your guess is as good as mine, my dude. I don't know. I think that guy has some issues, has some problems, clearly. And I also think he was aware that you were kind of onto him, too. Because you haven't seen him since. Do you know what I mean? I think a lot of people who are not closet bullshitters, but like full-on bullshitters, will know when somebody sees through. That's why he keeps looking at you. Do you know what I mean? Because he can gauge when somebody knows you're talking shit. Do you know what else happened there? Is you didn't really react to his initial sympathy bomb. You didn't react to it, really. So he kept upping the sympathy, upping the ridiculousness of it, trying to get you to sympathise with him. You know? I think this is somebody who's got trauma, like serious trauma, from something else, and he wants sympathy for that. Because he can't talk about that, he'll come in and just lie about something else and get sympathy for that, and then try and plaster that over what's actually hurting him. But because you didn't react to it, he was like, oh, okay, and then he kept coming back and again and again and again and again, trying to do different things, trying to do different, whatever. Anyway, our next one's from Sela. How's it going? Hi North, I'm Sela. I've been enjoying your stories and videos, and I have 2 shorter nightmares to share, although that might be a bit too strong a word. So let's go with 2 unpleasant dreams instead. One is a form of D&D Adventurers League, or AL for short, a game during lockdown, and one is a form of 40k that I played in Belgium. A form of 40k? The first is a simple don't be me lesson, and the other is a don't be that guy tale. Feel free to use either or both, or neither of the stories. I apologise in advance for the above average use of commas, but my language uses them a lot, so it's just the way that I write. It's fine, I like commas. Commas give me a little breath in a sentence. I don't mind commas. Anyway. Literally the first thing she writes is I, comma. The D&D story. I, comma, like many others, was fighting to stay sane during the COVID lockdowns. One of my ways to cope with the social isolation was to play D&D online. I was studying in the UK at the time, and the lockdowns over there were really strict. Luckily for me, I had been playing D&D AL, Adventurers League, on and off at a friendly local game store back in my home country before moving and while visiting on holidays. So, I was in the Discord, and some online games were being arranged because my home country was also going into lockdown. In case you weren't aware, D&D Adventurers League is a streamlined format of D&D one-shots, where you can easily transfer your character between games. Basically, whatever party shows up for a game is the one that happened to pick up the quest of the day from the Adventurers League quest board. Sounds... yeah. I was playing a game online where the DM warned me ahead of time that it was going to be a tough session, and that character death was indeed possible. If the dice didn't favour you, that is. I signed up anyway. We were basically doing a bit of a dungeon crawl, and while the path through the dungeon was tough, a few healing potions and a spell would easily do the trick. So, despite a few bruises, the party was in decent spirits. We eventually got to a puzzle door, and having trudged through the corridors, and we got stuck there for a while, trying to figure out what to do with the thing, because the wording of the puzzle was a bit jank. And there was, unfortunately, no way around it. This meant that the game, which started in the early evening, dragged on. This is important to know, because both players and DM were starting to get a little tired. When we did eventually crack the code, we could finally proceed to the boss room, cue the evil monologuing and snarky quips in return, and then the initiative roll. And we all rolled like trash. Like no one rolled higher than a 7, modifiers included. Oh well. The fight progressed very slowly because the boss was pretty tanky and had some really annoying mobs that we had to deal with as well. The party was tanky too, thanks to 2 healers, which meant the fight quickly devolved into a slow battle of attrition. This was made all the worse by our consistently terrible rolls in that particular fight. This is why I don't really like combat heavy role-playing games. Like, I don't know, man, it just grinds to a halt. At least for me. The first few rolls were the source of some jokes. The next rolls were met with moaning about RNGesus having forsaken us. And when our resources were beginning to dwindle, we, in our tired and frustrated state, began trashing on the encounter itself. The DM hadn't written the session himself, it was from an AL-approved compendium, and he was still taking time to run the game and was getting tired of our, quite frankly, childish moaning. Well, yeah, I get that. I'm going to take a quick sip of tea before I go anywhere else. Lovely. Nothing a good cup of tea can't fix. Anyway. The DM, to his credit, called us out on our poor attitude and said that a party of players in their 20s shouldn't act like 2-year-olds not getting what they want. We didn't play with cameras on, but it was quite clear that we just took a moment to look at each other while presumably blushing with embarrassment at our own rotten attitude and behaviour. Especially in a game, because, you know, he was getting tired too. The DM awarded us some inspirations for some of the jokes and in-character stuff. That's cool, that's cool. We eventually defeated the boss and once again apologised for the attitude and thanked him for running the session and for calling us out. I very rarely grumble about the dice, regardless of the game in question, but nobody is perfect, and that session was a reminder of that, and that I need to be better to catch myself from venting my frustrations like that. The lesson? Don't be like me or the others that evening. Do be like the DM and call out the poor behaviour. You don't just have to grin and bear it, and clear communication is often the best way to solve things. Yeah, clear communication takes a lot of mental strength, though. It's not all nerds have, and I get that. But on the same thing, yeah, I completely get what you're saying. I think you're right. I think clear communication is A1, what you should be doing in terms of a situation like this, and also sometimes the game itself is the nightmare, and D&D isn't a very good game. Not to me. It just... It's like 40k in that it's set up for conflict. It's set up for player conflict. It's set up for annoying grey areas that constantly creep up all of the time. You know... it's just not... I don't think it's a very well written game. And so when I hear about a hobby nightmare like this, I do kind of just nod along and go, yeah, do you know the game's the culprit here, 9 times out of 10? The way that combat was designed there, yes, you did roll pretty poorly, but from what you were saying, you'd be tired by the end of this session anyway. You know, players shouldn't be tired by the end of a D&D session. Alright? The D&D sessions I ran in university, the players bounded out of the room wanting to play again. Right? They were like, that was so cool, I wish we could just carry on. You know, like that's how they should be feeling. Any game where you walk away going, whew, you know, that was cool, but do you want to play again? No, I'm good, thanks. Any game that's like that, not a very good game. Whether it's 40k or D&D, in my opinion. Anyway, onto the 40k side of these things. After my time in the UK, I moved to Belgium for a year to continue my studies. I learned of a local game store where you could play some Warhammer in the evenings in a back room that they had. I went over and asked about it, saying that I was new in town and would love to find a place to play. The guy running the store that day told me they do indeed have games for members, but that I could tag along and get in an early game before the others would really start showing up. If I could find someone to play, that is. He invited me to a group chat, and one of the members swiftly invited me to get an early game in. Great. Fast forward to the day of the game. I show up, carry case in hand, and meet the guy who had invited me. We shook hands and bantered a little, while setting things up. He had a bit of an accent, but his English seemingly wasn't an issue. This is relevant to my rant further down later on. With tables and armies ready for deployment, we ran through our lists. He was playing Space Wolves, and I was running a bit of a hoardy Ultramarines list. I was a student, so 90% of my stuff was whatever I could get off eBay for cheap. We began the game, and I noticed him rolling behind terrain. I said, hey, I can't see when you roll from the building over there. Would you mind rolling in the open so I can keep up with what's going on? Dude, really good communication. That's really good communication. You've not accused him of cheating. You've not accused anything of going on. You just want to be in the loop. You just want to be involved in the game. You want to get the or ah. You know, you want to be celebrating his roles, right? Yeah, really good way of putting it. He apologised and did so for the rest of the game. Good. But when others began arriving, he would begin to chat with them rather than playing our game. It's not like I mind if someone exchanges a few hi howdy do's with their mates when they come in. It's a social hobby after all, but he would just begin to converse in Flemish, Belgian Dutch, and Walloon, Belgian French, while the others, I was awkwardly standing with the others whilst I was awkwardly standing there waiting for him to roll the saves and barely understanding anything as what was being said. I would try to call him back, reminding him of his saves that needed rolling, and he, somewhat reluctantly, went back to the table. It was then that he began to pull some stratagems and faction rules that seemed somewhat off to me, even though I had not met the Space Wolves before on the table. To avoid being too accusatory, since he could be playing legit despite something seeming a little off to my untrained eye, I asked, hey, can I have a look in the Codex? I haven't played against Space Wolves before, so I'd like to have a look at them and learn what they actually do, you know? He grumbled and whipped out a Codex in French. I sighed internally and shrugged, deciding not to make too much of a fuss about it. So I just say, my French is rather basic, never mind, let's just play on. He shrugged, and so we did. While playing on, he'd keep chatting to the others around him, though he did at least do his rolls, I guess. By the beginning of turn 4, it was plain I'd lose no matter what, and I was tired of his attitude and the nagging feeling that he was playing a bit dirty, again without me knowing for sure. Our warlords were in melee, so I decided to just do that one combat and call the game after that. I managed to beat his warlord, at which point the guy would pick up mine, without even asking, and try to balance him on top of his own, dropping mine in the process. I said I conceded, thanked him for the invite, and began packing up my stuff. I started by snatching my warlord model back. Okay, right. So, never, ever pick up your opponent's models without asking first. It's just terrible practice. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. It's just one of the shittiest things you can do. I don't know where your hands have been, you dirty bastard. And let's be honest, we're in this hobby. You know, a good 20% of you have probably been scratching your own arsehole, and then now you're over here touching my models. Again, I said 20%, I'm being fair. Most of you are cool, you know what I mean? But you know who you are, and you all know someone who's like that, so don't even come at me with the, why are you insulting our hobby? No. Stop scratching your arseholes, right? Okay. Now, some of the individual things may not be the end of the world, or even issues at all, in isolation. Sort of like, number 1, when I asked him to roll in the open, he did so, and the place he rolled was convenient for him, terrain or not, so he may not have thought about it. And number 2, while his English didn't seem to be an issue to me, I can't exactly fault somebody for using the rules in their main language. If he cheated or not is another matter, but the language barrier itself, with the Codex, obviously wasn't malicious on his part, and it would be unfair and unreasonable to say that it was. Yeah, it would be. But I also think we need to call this out, we need to call a spade a spade. It really did suit him, didn't it, to be doing really freaky rules with a codex that you can't read. He has absolute plausible deniability. He's got a codex you can't literally read because it's not on your language. Do you know what I mean? And the rest of his behaviour sort of points me to the direction of this guy was maybe playing shenanigans here, in my opinion. But the things that kind of strike a nerve with me were, number one, that he would just ignore me and start chatting to anybody around except for me. Look, he invited me to the game, so I think it's reasonable to expect him to play it with me. If he found it too boring or something, at least say so I can save myself the time and awkwardness, or just get better. And he kept doing it throughout, even when I had reminded him that we were in the middle of something here. It didn't help that we were speaking other languages, I suppose. I know it might come off as slightly entitled that others should cater to me in their own country, but if I was chatting in a social setting and one of the people in the same immediate setting wasn't speaking my native language, I'd switch over to English as to not keep them in the dark. Maybe that's just me and my friends, but I'd say that should be a basic courtesy in most contexts. Yes, but these are French people. You may be in Belgium, but they're speaking French, so the attitude, dude, Frenchies don't do this. Sorry if you're French, but you know what I'm talking about. They're not gonna speak English. They're just not. No, right? No. It's gonna be in French. You will always get an exception to the rule, but every single time, dude, I've been in a university in Britain, right, where there's been like multiple French people around. You're in Britain, okay? You're in England. And there are English people around, and they will still talk to each other in their native language and just cut everybody else out. Right? Literally, they just cut everybody else out. Dated a German girl once who did that once in front of me with some girl that she'd just met on a night out, and I was like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't. It was quite obvious that they were talking about people in the group. Do you know what I mean? I was like, yeah. Dude, I'm not stupid. I may not know what you're saying, but I know what you're doing. Alright? Don't be bitching about people in your own language and don't do shit like that. Right? So people will do this, unfortunately. And French people, dude, I don't care. You've got a rep for a reason. They have a rep internationally for doing shit like this. They will only speak in French in their own, don't get me wrong, as you just said, it is very entitled to go into another person's country and say, you need to speak my language. I get that. But if we're playing a social game, and I'm the only person there who's English, and I may look like I'm a bit nervous, you do kind of owe it, if you can speak English, to involve that other person in your conversation. So, just so they know you're not bitching about them or being an asshole, that kind of a thing. That's what I would do. That's what Clea would do. Or, and that's what I'd do, right? Or Sealer, sorry. So that's what you should do, But like you asking a French person to do that, no. Most of the French people I know would laugh at me for even suggesting that. They'd be like, ha ha ha, right? Like on The Simpsons, where the bottom of their mouth is like a frog. Anyway, 2. That he just began messing with my minis without even asking and dropping one of them in the process. I don't mind somebody having a look at my painting, not that it's much to look at, but at least ask, and then don't start playing with it so carelessly, please. And number 3, while the potentially cheating behaviour can be explained away, I still felt annoyed at it all the same. The above probably didn't help with my perception. The rolling behind terrain had been a red flag, so also primed me to be on my toes, even if he didn't necessarily do it to cheat. The lesson, if you invite somebody to play, don't just start ignoring them halfway through to chat to others. Especially not in a way the invited person can't even participate with. And don't mess with each other's minis. A very brief hobby story from Belgium happened in Brussels in Warhammer store for its anniversary though. I'd gotten a bit better at French at this point, and a classmate of mine from uni invited me to participate. It was super fun. Some showed up in cosplay, and the store rep held a quiz and had set up some other small games and were happy to speak whatever language the participants needed, be it Walloon, Flemish, English, or even German. Super fun and relaxed atmosphere and prizes galore. The tiny store was packed. That shows, hey, you've got a welcoming atmosphere, shows what you can achieve, right? So yeah, those are my stories. They are far from the worst you can find up there, but I still felt like sharing. I hope you found something out of this. Kind regards, Sealer. No worries, thank you. And yes, it was really, really cool. So thank you very much for sharing those. I am at 40 minutes, which is much longer than I thought I was going to be today. I'll be back tomorrow with some more 40k rantage. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll speak to you very, very soon. Have a good one. Bye now.